You are listening to Contraband.
Good morning and welcome to the Wake Up Call's first episode of 2026. Happy New Year. And I got a email rather, the other day from a guy named Gregory. We're just going to call him Gregory. The subject line read, subtle racism. And here's what it said. So as an author and the educated man that you are, I'm going to assume that you fully believe in subtle and not so subtle acts of racism. That being said, let me ask you a question. If you were to read from a book that dealt with racial or historical issues, and throughout that same book, the author used a capital W when referring to whites, but a lowercase b when referring to blacks, would you find that to be racist or offensive or a subtle suggestion that whites were somehow more worthy of greater respect or recognition than blacks? Would you believe and label that author to be a white supremacist? I don't know if you received this message, but if you do, I have a feeling that you will be reluctant or even honest enough with me or yourself to admit your own racism. I mean, unless, of course, that is your belief that blacks are in fact superior to whites. Yes, no doubt that is the case, as you obviously made a conscientious decision to do just that in reverse in your book, Black AF History. I found that to be disappointing. And this guy is a retired Detroit public high school teacher. And in the past, this would have been great fodder for a series I used to do called the Clapback Mailbag. And I was going to clap back at Gregory, but then I realized, like a lot of white people, Gregory probably just doesn't know. First of all, I want to assure Greg that it is not my decision to capitalize black. It had nothing to do with me. I could almost guarantee that when I wrote Black AF History, I did not capitalize the word black. And that's because the capitalization of the word black is fairly new. As a matter of fact, when the AP made the decision to start capitalizing black, I had been writing for years and hadn't been used to capitalizing black. Most publications create what they call a style book. And it's basically a guide so that writers and editors will always use a uniform standard of punctuation and capitalization. For instance, I was used to using what they call the Oxford comma. So, for instance, if I was writing a sentence that said, someone brought home a tomato, comma, an apple, comma, and a banana, I would put a comma after each thing in the list. But AP style doesn't use the Oxford comma. And that is something I had to get used to. And the same is true with the capitalization of the word black. My editor would get on me all the time, like, we capitalize black, right? You got to start capitalizing black. And I would just forget because I was used to not capitalizing black. So at that same time, I was also writing Black AF History. So I can promise you, like, the editor of that book capitalized black, not me. For instance, when you were in college and you started writing papers, your professor probably told you to use Chicago style for footnotes, or maybe MLA style. And that comes from style manuals or style books. And most news organizations and some colleges use AP style, Associated Press. And the Associated Press, not me, not like some group of radical black people. In 2020, the Associated Press made the decision to start capitalizing black. And here is what they said. AP style is now to capitalize black in a racial, ethnic, or cultural sense, conveying an essential and shared sense of history. The lowercase black is a color, not a person. The AP style will continue to lowercase the term white in a racial, ethnic, and cultural sense. These decisions align with long-standing capitalization of distinct racial and ethnic identifiers such as Latino, Asian American, and Native American. Our discussions on style and language consider many points. including the need to be inclusive and respectful in our storytelling and the evolution of language. We found at this time less support for capitalizing white. White people generally do not share the same history and culture or the experience of being discriminated against because of skin color. In addition, AP is a global news organization, and there is a considerable disagreement, ambiguity, and confusion about whom the term includes in much of the world. So, Gregory, this is why my publishers, HarperCollins, which is part of a corporation who adopted the standards of a global organization, capitalized Black. Had nothing to do with me. And I don't disagree with them, right? Because whether you're talking about Black Americans, Black people from Jamaica, Black people from Africa, you're talking about a shared sense of history and culture, especially when you're talking about a U.S. news organization. And the opposite is not true with white people. The term white as a descriptor of people was created to be exclusionary from the start. This is not just my opinion. In 1922, a man named Takao Ozawa filed a case that went all the way up to the Supreme Court. At the time, the citizenship laws said that anyone could become a citizen who was a free white person who was not of African descent. His argument was that I was born free in Japan, my skin is white, and I'm not of African descent, so I should be a citizen. The lower court held that the words white person was only to indicate a person of what is popularly known as the Caucasian race. To adopt the color test alone would result in a confused overlapping of races and a gradual merging of one into the other without any practical line of separation. We know that race is a social construct, but the Supreme Court agrees that white